Welcome to Big Little Stories. I'm Ivy Sharmetz. So, a few months ago, I was watching a TED Talk on YouTube from Birkdale Community College called Being Good with You in a World of Comparison. And the speaker was Ollie Taylor, who is the founder of Wisdom+Wayfinder and the CEO and creative director of Bell Marketing Design Studio. And right after I watched the talk, I knew I wanted to chat with Ali about it. So I'm very happy that he is joining me today. Thank you so much for being here, Ali.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Ivy.
So I want to talk about your talk,
Sure.
but I kind of want to set this up a little bit. You're a business coach, you're a branding expert, but you have this passion for personal development that plays a key role in a lot of the work that you do. And I'm sort of wondering, where does that come from for you?
Yeah, well, it comes from, just a desire to always be improving, to do better. I noticed early on, I would say about 2015, 2016, that's when I did my first like real personal and professional development course. And it led to a lot of breakthroughs for me. I just recently started Bell Marketing Design Studio, going out on my own for the first time in a while. And then I noticed that there were a lot of the personal things that were showing up in my business. One of them being the relationship that I have with my father, which wasn't good at the time. But it was like after that, after I did that first course, I was able to sort of repair the relationship with my father. And, we got to be, it's like my dad got his son back. I got my father back. My mom got us both back. Like there was no longer that animosity that was playing a role. And I was no longer working to try to prove something to my father or trying to prove something to the company that I had just left. And so I noticed like being able to have that breakthrough, being able to, mend and repair that relationship allowed me to start operating a little bit more freely in my business, and I believe I tripled my revenue
Oh,
shortly
wow.
after that. So yeah.
So did you feel like a physical difference? Like sometimes when you do that kind of work and you sort of free yourself from some of those feelings that you were describing, did it physically feel different for you as well? Like lighter?
Yeah, a lot less stress here in the shoulders and
Yeah,
the
that's
neck.
right.
Immediately it was like that sort of sigh of relief, like,
Yeah.
oh
Yeah.
my, like when my father told me that he was proud of me, right? When I stopped trying to get that approval, that's when he was able to tell me that he was proud of me. And so it's just like that feeling of relaxing, like,
So,
oh, I can actually just show up the way that I want to show up now.
yeah. Yeah, which must have felt like you were being your genuine self.
Hmm.
So one of the things that you talk about right at the start of this TED Talk is the dreams that you had when you first got
Hmm.
accepted to school, and what you thought your life was going to look like, and the people that you would be surrounded with, and the things that you would do. Talk to me a little bit about that and how that sort of set the foundation for this topic.
Yeah, well, growing up, like I said at the beginning of the talk, it was like, I didn't feel very connected. Like home didn't feel like home. I didn't feel like I had the kind of relationships that I really wanted. I didn't really feel seen or heard or understood. And that's a theme that's played a role throughout my life, is wanting to have that experience, but realizing that when you place that outside of yourself, when you're expecting other people to do that for you versus you doing that for yourself, like there's never enough people that, or enough achievements that you could get in order to actually have that experience until you learn to do it for yourself. And that's really what kind of came through for me after that.
And I thought it was interesting too because you talk about we all have this search for belonging,
Hmm.
and when we don't find that, you mentioned two things, and it kind of made me think, the idea of isolation and unhealthy influences, and
Yeah.
we live in a world where people spend more time on social media than they do
Hmm.
interacting with people in real life, and so it's very easy to feel isolated and to get wrapped up in those unhealthy influences. So how does that play into this line of thinking?
Yeah, well, I mean, it all comes, it comes down to, it's a very sort of primal. need that we all have, that need to belong, right? Back when we
Right.
were, hunting and gathering, it's like if you weren't a part of the tribe, that literally meant death. And so we haven't outgrown that. We haven't evolved past that. So it's still very much an important part of how we connect and how we interact today. And so, yeah, you may not physically be left out in the wilderness to go get attacked by, some predator, but it still feels like that to be kicked out of a group that you thought that you found belonging with, or that you thought, oh, these are my people. And then you realize that, oh, wait, we don't fit, we don't mesh. And oftentimes people will sacrifice their authentic, genuine identity to stay apart, to stay connected, because they don't want to have that experience or that feeling of not being a part of something, of not
Yeah.
belonging.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's one of the reasons why I've always been such a fan, and why I've always thought storytelling has been so important, because when we share our stories,
Yeah.
our authentic stories, that's how we make authentic connections, and have the chance to build community with people who maybe are feeling isolated because they haven't heard someone else experience what they are experiencing.
Yeah, I forgot what's that quote. It says, if you ask a man a question like directly, he won't tell you the truth, but if you give him a mask, he'll
Mm,
tell you everything
yeah.
that you want to know. That's what social media is often like, for a lot of people. It's like I can't be this, person, this version of myself, this authentic expression of who I am with the people that I'm surrounded by, but I can go online and create this whole persona, this whole identity, and find other people who might feel the same way.
So that actually brings us to the very next thing that I wanted to talk about, which is the idea that you share that comparison is the thief of joy.
Mm,
And when you think about that, that is actually a very powerful statement, because as we've been talking about, we live in a world where we're constantly comparing, and measuring our own success based on things like how many likes we get, or
hmm
on Instagram, or but how do you talk to yourself to not fall into that grind of constantly
hmm
comparing?
Well, I mean, social media just exacerbated that
Yeah,
issue. I mean, before it's like you could just compare yourself to, the neighbor down the
keeping
street,
up with the
or the
Joneses.
person in your classroom. Yeah, keeping up with the Joneses. I have to go get this particular outfit or drive this car because so and so has it, and you know, your mom or maybe your wife, or spouse or partner is like, well, why can't you be more like that person,
Right.
right? We all, there's been a lot of that. Um, but yeah, it is a constant conversation with oneself to get back to the root of, do I really want this, or do I want this because this is what society is telling me that I should want, right? Is this what I'm following because I don't want to be seen as weird or seen as like an outcast, or again, going back to that, I don't want to be kicked out of the tribe, wherever
Right.
that tribe exists.
Right.
um, but it really comes down to, you have to be good with you. And so that's why I proposed certain things in that TED talk of like, get into the mirror and have those conversations with yourself.
We're gonna.
Yeah.
I actually have some notes. I want to talk about the suggestions that
Yeah.
you made, but I also, before we do that,
hmm
you said, and you just touched on this too, but that hunger for initiation. What does that actually mean? What is
Yeah.
what is hunger for initiation?
Yeah, so for a lot of early humans or whatnot, especially for men, there was this experience of initiation, right? So the young boys, they would often be with the moms and the tribe, and doing whatever, and then there would come a point at which point the men in the tribe would take the boy out into the woods. Maybe it's like the first hunt or something like that, right? Whatever it was, there was just that experience of, when you complete this, you are now seen as a man,
Mm,
right? When you do this, you are now seen as a woman. It was like a marker or an identification, right? A
yeah.
crossing of some kind of proverbial threshold, whatever it looks like in that particular group, that identifies you as, you are a man, you are a woman, you are now an adult, you are now seen as something more. This is your identity that you've stepped into. And so
Um,
I think a lot of, we're kind of missing that in a lot of society. Those traditional markers, especially for men, in terms of, you know, You go, you get a job, you buy a house, you get married, all those things. A lot of those traditional markers are being delayed. They're being harder to come by, and so there's just that lack of, oh, I've done this, now I'm an adult. Now I'm a fully formed human in some way.
So you get to go into a new group of belonging, right? It's an
Yeah.
accomplishment, and then you're in a new group. You mentioned this, and we should say you're not a doctor, you're not a mental
No.
health professional, but I know that you do a lot of work in this space, and I'm wondering particularly with men. We
Hmm.
I feel like in the last several years we've all gotten a little more comfortable talking about mental health and talking about
Hmm.
the things that you're talking about. But I still think that for men, it's 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 still a little bit of a challenge sometimes. So talk
Yeah.
about how it is as a man talking about these things, and how I would imagine, because you are so open about this, that other people
Hmm.
feel comfortable being open with you about it as well.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I've people have told me their entire life stories within the first 5 minutes of meeting me. I remember it happened at a I went to go to a happy hour to see a friend of mine, and guy next to me just opened up and just everything came out, and um, I consider it a gift, right? To be able to, one, be that kind of person that, I give off something in my
Yeah.
energy that says, hey, I'm a safe person. You can, share these things with me. And I think that goes back to a lot of the isolation and loneliness that people are experiencing, that they don't have other places or people in their lives that they can really share these things with, right? And again, oftentimes if it's with a stranger, it's easier to be more open because this isn't a person that we've attached all of our identity to,
Right.
right? We haven't made their approval so important to me, right?
Well, and I think also we talked about authentic storytelling too. And when you are sharing something that hits someone deeply inside of them, all of a sudden it feels like it's okay to share because you're not going to
Yeah.
judge them. It's a safe
Hmm.
place for them to be their authentic selves, and you are sort of building that bond in that community that we are all sort of seeking. It's a different form of belonging.
Yeah, it's one that crosses like those geographic bounds, racial bounds,
Yeah.
societal bounds, to be able to have that sort of connection, even if it's just in that moment and I never see that person again. They at least know that there's somebody out there who, felt the sin that they did, and overcame it. Most importantly,
Yeah.
right? I
Yeah.
think that's an important critical part, is just to know that yes, you are not alone in what you're experiencing, and there are other people that have gotten through it, and you will too.
And I feel like the more we tell people that, the more they'll believe it, and they'll feel that
Yeah.
that's really their case. We have to take a very quick break, but when we come back, I want to
Sure.
talk to you. We mentioned the steps that you use, that you share with other people, and I want to talk about how this all kind of plays into your actual real professional life with your clients, and how you help them, and all that stuff. So we'll take a break,
Yeah.
and we will be right back with more Big Little Stories. All right, so Ali, we were talking about the issues, right? The challenges that we
Mhm.
have in this world, but I want to talk about some solutions. And you break it
Sure.
down into three seemingly manageable, easy to digest things that we can all do, all of us really can do, right? On this personal development journey. Is that what you call it?
Hmm.
Is it fair to call it a personal development journey?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
That's fair. Okay.
Yeah.
So the first thing you say we have to do is learn to be still. And
Mm.
you said, and when I heard you say this, I actually paused for a minute. Um, if you take away your attention, you take back your power. What does that
Yes.
mean?
Yeah.
I feel like we could talk for an hour just about that.
Well, again, so coming from my background in marketing and design and branding, and paying attention to a lot of what happens in the news and the media, there is that old saying that if it bleeds, it leads,
Yeah.
right? And so those are the things that often get attention. Those are things that are often highlighted. Those are the things that are shown most often in our news feeds and in our algorithms. We know that it's whatever gets the most engagement, and often it is when we are angry and upset. That is when people are the most engaged, and they're going to go online and say all the things that they want to say. And so when you take a step back from that, right? It's kind of like if you had a row of matches and each one is burning. It's when you pull the one match out, that's when the fire stops,
Mm,
right? And so taking away your attention is akin to that. It is saying I don't have to be outraged by whatever's being put in front of me. I don't have to engage in um, the story. And I think oftentimes we need to pause and really ask the question of you know what is the intended outcome of excuse me, of this story. What do they want me to feel? What do they want me to think? And what is the benefit if I feel or think that way,
mm.
right? And
But
then how does it serve me?
I'm going to interrupt you for a second because
Yeah.
you're sort of going against what the business model is now. We don't just happen to come across things that
Hmm.
have make us feel angry or rile us up. That's what the algorithms are doing on purpose because they want us to stay more engaged and have that emotional reaction. So,
Yeah.
that has to add to this challenge, I would imagine.
Oh, 100%. I mean, yeah, there are certain things that you should be absolutely outraged about, but it should come from a place of your choosing.
Mm,
It should come from a place of your principles. Like, yeah, I'm going to be outraged about this because it aligns with what I believe and what my values are, not what somebody else or some outside entity is telling me that I need to be upset about.
right, right. If you're outraged about everything, you're outraged about nothing, really, right?
Yeah.
It can't be everything. And then the second point that you make, or the second step, I should say, is decide who you are, which seems like it's
Yeah.
simple, but I feel like that could be a whole
That's a
whole
lifelong
multitude of things.
journey.
Of course, of course. So how do you decide who
Yeah.
you are, and where do you start? Like if you're someone who's listening, and you think, well, who am I? How do I decide who
Mhm.
I am?
Yeah, well, that goes back to one just being still. Like you have to pull away from um, all of the outside influences, whether it's your family, whether it's the news, whether it's your friends. Or really get quiet and start to listen to that still small voice inside that tells you, you know, yes, I like this, or I don't like this, or I stand for this or I stand for that. And you often have to challenge that. You're going to come up across situations that we're going to test your values, see whether it's something that you believe as a surface level thing, or is it something that you're going to take a stand on. And oftentimes what we take a stand on is going to cost us something,
Mm.
right? There is going to be some sacrifice in a way, and so you have to determine if that sacrifice is worth it.
And I imagine too, if you're trying to find out who you are and decide who you are, you might have to dust off some things that you might not like about yourself to really get to the truth, and that could be, I would imagine, a difficult
Yeah.
piece of this.
Oh, 100%. And I imagine the next part is we're going to talk about is the mirror work.
We sure are.
Um,
so
yeah.
so let me
So,
just mention that.
yeah.
The third thing, because we can tie this all together, is face yourself in the mirror, which
Yeah.
if you don't like who you are, that could be a very difficult thing to do.
Yeah. I would say if you don't like who you are, that's the perfect place to start,
Oh, okay.
right? What is it that you don't like, and why don't you like that part of yourself or who you are? And then you have to look at from a place where I've given where you've given away your power someplace,
Mm,
where you haven't shown up authentically, where you've just been living the life that other people have told you that you should live. And then you realize, like, oh, well, yeah, I have all these successes, these external successes, but I don't really like who I am, and I don't like the person that I had to become to get there,
mm,
right? So, really dealing with um, every aspect of yourself, because you can never be truly good with who you are until you can be with how bad you've been or the parts that you don't like about yourself. Oftentimes we're trying to change that part or ignore that part or discard it, when really what we need to do is show it some compassion, right? There's a reason that you did the thing that you didn't like, whether it was from survival or you were afraid of something. But you have to own it. You have to own all of it, and that is something that takes practice. It is not an easy overnight, kind of a thing. It is, for me, it's a daily practice to do that. Um, Initially when I started, it was like every day, sometimes twice a day, getting in the mirror and
And you talk about the
dealing with what there was for
affirmations,
me to
right?
deal with.
What are some of the
Yeah,
affirmations that you started with, and how has that sort of progressed, and how do you share
yeah,
that with other people as well?
yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, in the spirit of just vulnerability and honesty for me, it was the feeling of being unwanted, unworthy, and
Mm,
undesired. And so I really had to deal with all the places where, one, that I felt that way, but then what were the actions that I did that mirrored that? So, did it look like, um, tolerating mistreatment or, behavior from people that didn't treat me with value or respect? And how long did I let that go on? And
mhm.
why did I let that go on? Right. And really getting clear and honest with myself about why I did those things. And
How
then I was able to shift to the other side.
and so now that you're on the other side, or it feels like
Mhm.
you're never really at the final destination, right? There's always like
No,
work
there's always
being
another
done.
layer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But now that you are there, and you're a business coach, you're a branding expert.
Hmm.
How does all of this work? Because to me, it feels like
Yeah.
they're interwoven in a way where, when you talk about branding, who you
Hmm.
really are, and how you want to show up, there is some of all of this that we're talking about in that as well. So how do you do that with your
Yeah.
clients?
So one, I don't lead with that, because if I
Right.
say that we're going to work on
That's
like
fair.
your mental
That's
health,
fair.
they're gonna run away. They're like, oh wait, I got to work on myself. No way.
Fair.
Um, yeah, but it shows up. It shows up in the decisions that people make about their business and how it's structured, the money that they're bringing in, whether they hire a team or not. Some people think that they don't deserve for things to be easy. They don't deserve to have money coming in easily, and so they will work themselves to the bone, 14, 16 hours a day, um, working really hard because they don't feel like they've earned it if they don't.
Yeah.
And so it comes up in conversations. Like I said, I don't lead with it. But if I see that there's a blockage, if there's, like, for instance, I had one client I was working with who I had given an assignment to, needed some information back from her. And it took like 2 weeks.
Mm.
Like, we had two meetings in between that, but it took 2 weeks for her to finally get it done. But it wasn't until after I had a conversation with her where we discovered there was something with when she was younger and she was doing her homework and her grandmother had like yelled at her or something about using the eraser, and so she needed to think before she writes something down.
Oh
And
wow.
so you carry that forward, and now
Yeah.
it's like, oh, now you have an adult who overthinks everything and they don't want to make a decision until they're absolutely certain. And so think of how that impacts your business, where it's like you've
Yeah.
got to make a decision, but now you're overthinking it, and then window of opportunity passes because you've overthought what it is the decision that you need to make.
It's fascinating how everything is connected, and how the things that are happening in our mind are really affecting everything that how we show up for
Mm-hmm.
the world, and how we do everything. What's your website if people want to find you?
Wisdom and Wayfinder.com.
Awesome. We end every show here with something we like to call three big little questions. We ask everybody the same
Okay.
questions. Are you ready for this? We'll do this rapid fire.
All
Um,
right.
okay, so how do you get yourself out of a bad mood?
Work out or go walking.
Okay. Okay, and that helps? That works?
Yeah.
What is your go to karaoke song?
Ooh, Drive by Incubus.
Oh, okay. Also part
Mhm.
of the right. Incubus was also part of the TED Talk. I pay attention.
It
And
was.
what's one of your favorite spots in New Jersey?
Oh,
It could be a restaurant, a place, a town, anything.
oh, well, I love going to the beach. That's like my favorite place at night to like meditate and stuff.
Yes,
But if
yes.
you're talking about a restaurant, definitely Brando's in Asbury Park
Oh, okay.
for their dry aged steak.
Awesome. Ali Taylor,
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining us. This has been a great talk, and I know we could probably keep going for so long, but I appreciate you taking the time. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah. I appreciate you having me on.
Of course. All right, that is it for Big Little Stories for today. I'm Ivy Sharmetz. I'll talk to you next time.